going to showboat, knock down the shot.
For what his value is, it doesn't equate to winning basketball.
Because when you're talking about the greatest of greats, that's what you have to do. You have to nitpick.
We'll see you in the playoffs. We'll see you in the playoffs.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the TMO Podcast. I am Jace Eustace, joined, as always, by Jarrett Huff. Jarrett, we are we're 23 hours post-trade deadline as we're sitting here recording this. It was a lot crazier than I think a lot of people thought it was going to be. So how was the trade deadline for you, my man?
Well, yeah, that's just the thing. We're talking about it on our last podcast, how we weren't really seeing much going on. There wasn't a lot of fire, not even a lot of smoke.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, a couple of days before the deadline, move after move after move. I mean, 30 minutes after we got done recording our podcast last week, Kyrie Irving got dealt to the Dallas Mavericks. So
he requested it. Yeah, 30 minutes right after we were
yeah, the request. That's right.
Oh, man.
So he couldn't have waited till after he couldn't have waited to do that. Or I mean, he couldn't have done that earlier, so we would have had something more to talk about. It's a little selfish of him. I mean, help us out, guy. Come on.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it was wild. I was at work for most of it. So I was just watching everything come in on my phone, and I'm like, it felt like half the NBA shifted.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, that's the kind of trade deadlines that we kind of like, where it's hard to keep up. You got your phone, you got the Bleacher Report notifications coming in, and just trying to keep up with who's going where. And then you get those trades where you always get parts of it, and it's like, oh, there's going to be a third team brought into this, and who's going where, who actually ended up on what team, who's going to be bought out, who will never play a game with those teams. We're going to get into all of that here in this podcast, but we would be remiss if we did not start off with some of the biggest news, and that is the biggest moves coming out of Brooklyn, and that is the Nets sending away both Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on this trade deadline. And those were some big moves, and I know a lot of people did not see coming going into this one. And really, it just kind of came out of nowhere, where Kyrie Irving, we thought they were going to all kind of stand pat at that trade deadline. Kyrie Irving then comes out and does what Kyrie does and requests a trade. And it turns out that he was then dealt to the Dallas Mavericks for Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, a 2029 first rounder, and 2 second-round picks, which we'll talk about a little bit. But those second-round picks were just being tossed around like nothing. There were deals with 6, 7 second-round picks, it seemed like, man.
Yeah, there are a few trades where it was 5 second-round picks at a time that were, I think, Portland or Houston or one of those teams were involved in some of that madness.
Oh, yeah.
That's the kind of stuff I'm doing in NBA 2K, where I'm really not trying to give up capital.
Just throw
if we play
them
2K,
there.
the second round picks don't do anything. But you try to throw them on the trade, and you throw one on a trade, you try to submit it, and it doesn't go through. So you throw a second one on, and then you get all the way down to where all the spaces you can use up, and you got 5 second round picks. That's what that looked like. It was like someone was playing 2K out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I got to ask, man, what did you think about this move? Kyrie going to Dallas. Now we've seen one game of him in Dallas. They looked good. They won without Luka, but it's Kyrie. What do you think? How is he going to fit in there with the Mavericks?
Like how we talked about last week, how Siakam would have been one of our dream pair ups with Luka. Obviously that didn't happen, as Toronto didn't do much during the deadline, except take in assets they've sent away, as many teams did during this deadline. But I think, despite the questions of the fit, despite Kyrie's future aspirations, I think it is a move the Mavericks definitely needed to take a risk on. It sucks to see a player like Dorian Finney-Smith go, and Dinwiddie has been really good for the Mavericks in spots. But the Mavericks should be in a win now mindset, because you don't know how long Luka's going to stick around, because the Mavericks haven't been able to draw any players in since he came into the league. And that's been a problem for this franchise. It's been a big concern for this franchise. So I am okay that they went out and took a swing at Kyrie, because regardless whether he stays beyond the season or not, it shows to Luka hey, we are committed to trying to build around you. We're committed to trying to go out and get great players to help you win. And given what the Mavericks did last year with basically the same roster and Luka plus Jalen Brunson,
even without Christian Wood. They didn't even have Christian Wood yet.
Yeah, that is also true. They didn't have Christian Wood. They were able to get to the Western Conference Finals, and with Kyrie, who has championship experience, despite not really being in competitive playoff series in a while, maybe this gets them over a hill in a wide open Western Conference for the most part.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
never
The
know.
West is wide open. What concerns me though is like it's a high risk and I don't see a high reward because I'm just looking at the history of Kyrie Irving and you just go back down in his career and every place that he's been, he's burnt it to the ground at this point. Like
Mm-hmm.
when he was originally requested that trade, it came out of nowhere with the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's like, get me out of here. I want to leave. Left LeBron, went to Boston. That Boston, when he was there, they were better without him. They went further in the playoffs when he was injured. When he came back, they, I think, only got out of the first round, lost in the second round of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen they've now been to an NBA Finals with that young core that's not Kyrie Irving involved. Now with Brooklyn, we're seeing it all burn down as well. You can blame that on a multitude of different things, but Kyrie Irving definitely has his part in that. So what concerns me about this is I do feel like the Mavericks needed to make a move. They felt like they needed to make a move, go out and get that second star for Luka Doncic. What concerns me is the second star you got is Kyrie Irving, and we just know his history. On the court, it's going to be the most dangerous front court that we've ever seen. In like those two out there is unguardable offensively. And we've already seen, if you kind of go and look at the advanced numbers throughout the season, the Dallas Mavericks with Luka on the court has been the best offense in the league. It's just when he is out of the game, they can't score a bucket. And obviously, we know they have their problems defensively. But what Dallas is doing is they're just putting all their chips on the offensive end. They're just trying to say maybe they can stagger the minutes a little bit between Kyrie and Luka and just kind of not have those low points in a game where neither of them are out on the court running the offense and just kind of having them continue to flow and run the ball through them, run the offense through them. So the only concern I have for this is that obviously we know the Mavericks' ultimate goal is to get Luka to stay there for as long as possible, if not his entire career. I'm sure they'd love for him to be another Dirk, get a championship out of Luka, if not more. What concerns me is that if everything does, if it does hit the shan and all of a sudden Luka's looking around, I think if Kyrie becomes Kyrie in Dallas, that could be one of the reasons ultimately that Luka decides I got to get out of here and I got to leave. So that it's one of those, it's high risk. Yeah, if they go out and win a championship this year, it's worth it because you're hanging a banner and those banners hang forever. But what concerns me is that second star is Kyrie Irving, and we all know his history at this point.
Yeah, I gotta say, tearing down the Brooklyn Nets, some of Kyrie's finest work. That was impressive.
Yeah, well, after he left, we thought that was probably going to be it as far as tearing down the Brooklyn Nets, but we were wrong because just, I believe, 48 hours later or something like that, Kevin Durant ends up getting traded to the Phoenix Suns late at night. Kevin Durant, TJ Warren going to the Suns. The Nets get Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, who was then later dealt to the Milwaukee Bucks, 4 first-round picks and a 2028 pick swap in that one. So how did you think of the KD deal?
I think it's a great move for both sides. Obviously, many could speculate, considering KD already asked out over the summer, that with Kyrie leaving, who's his buddy, KD was not likely long for Brooklyn. Now, I personally didn't expect a move at the deadline. I figured Nets are, at this time, there were 10 games over 500. Now they're 11, I believe, thanks to my Bulls. But like they're a team that's 10 over 500 and KD's coming back. Like maybe there's something still you could salvage with this season. They just got a package back from the Mavericks, and there's a possibility they were still going to make another move, potentially flip some of the assets in that package, and still compete. Because in the East, like you have Kevin Durant, you're going to be competing for a chance at getting out of the East. He's one of the greatest players in the NBA. And then all of a sudden, Kevin Durant's gone, and Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, that's a pretty nice return, along with what is it, the 4 first-round draft picks?
Yeah, 4 first-round picks and a 2028 pick swap as well.
I think it's a great recovery because the Nets, like many cases in their past 10-year history, don't control their own draft picks. The Rockets own a lot of those picks. Well, in this case, they're getting a lot of their missing picks back in a sense. While they're not going to be most likely a competitive team, they have some assets for the future, or assets they can send to contenders in the future if they don't want to hold on to them. Like Mikal Bridges is a really nice player. Cam Johnson is a really nice player, where maybe we see these two reach higher potentials than they would have in Phoenix, playing behind Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, and Chris Paul, in terms of just like importance in the rotation. I think it's a great move for Phoenix because clearly they were missing something this season. They've been dealing with a lot of injuries, and yeah, all three of their players have missed time due to the injuries. They're big three now, but if these guys are healthy, they they're damn near title favorites if you ask me. Kevin Durant,
Yeah.
Chris Paul, and Devin Booker all on one team. Good luck trying to stop that offense.
Yeah, the move makes complete sense from the Suns' perspective because I think they're kind of looking around and saying this is going to be the last chance that we have at kind of this core. Obviously, we know what went down this offseason with DeAndre Ayton if he was even going to stay around. I believe he signed an offer and then they matched it. I can't remember who he signed it with, but being able to go and get Kevin Durant while still maintaining Booker, Paul, and DeAndre Ayton, that's huge. But obviously, you're giving up a lot of those rotational pieces in Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson. I know Jay Crowder wasn't playing, but he was on that roster. But it's the Suns, it makes complete sense because you're saying we are going for it this year. And whether this is the last year, Chris Paul is what he still is. We know he's dealing with a lot of injuries as he gets up there with it in age. But it's just kind of the fit too, where if all four of those big four, I guess you could say, if you're counting DeAndre Ayton, and you can still consider Chris Paul a top tier player, Chris Paul, obviously at his age too, he wants to distribute. He wants to continue to be the point god. He's not looking to score 20 points a night. He would love to score 10 points a night and continue to just move that ball all around the offense. Now with Kevin Durant too, it opens it up with just his ability to knock down a shot wherever he goes. Devin Booker, if he's healthy, is one of those guys as well. But obviously, KD gives you a lot more as far as the size and just his level of talent. And DeAndre Ayton, if he can get locked in, he can dominate down below. We saw that in the playoffs the last 2 years as well. So it does make sense for the Suns. But I will say for the Nets, after seeing the KD move, I don't understand the Kyrie move as well because when they made the Kyrie move and they got Dorian Finney-Smith, they got Spencer Dinwiddie, it looks like it was a move that was going to help them right now. Looked like a move that they were going to come in. Hey, we're going to retool a little bit. You know, Spencer Dinwiddie gives us 60% of what Kyrie gives us on the offensive side. Dorian Finney-Smith is a 3-and-D player. He can guard a lot of the best defenders in the league, or one of the best offensive players in the league. And then a couple days later, you send KD to the Suns. I just think maybe this is a little bit of, my bias trying to help out some of the teams that I follow. But I'm looking at the Lakers where you could have got 2 first-round picks. That looks like a better package to me if you're not looking to contend than what the Mavericks gave up to get Kyrie Irving. Because I feel like when you make the Kyrie move, you're saying we're still going to be able to contend. We're retooling around Kevin Durant. Then you trade away Kevin Durant. And now you're not just saying, hey, we're like that. When you trade away Kevin Durant, it's making the move of saying we're not going to contend. We're not going to win a championship because we're trading away these guys. So you would think that future draft capital in those first round picks would be worth more than, a rotational piece that is just going to be gone in a year or two because you're not going to pay them anyways. So to me, it was a little bit of mixed messaging from the Nets front office with these 2 trades back to back.
I have 2 theories on why that was the case with why they made the deal with the Mavericks. And a big part of that is the Nets, they don't like Kyrie.
Yeah.
The ownership doesn't like him. Management doesn't like him. And they didn't want to reward Kyrie for essentially destroying what they had going because he drove James Harden out of town. He created an environment that was so untenable that Kevin Durant wanted to leave. Probably not so much because of Kyrie, but because it created a divide between management, ownership, and the team's 2 stars. And they're like, we're not going to reward Kyrie for this. We're not going to send him to Los Angeles. And typically the Lakers have been a franchise that other teams really don't want to help. And this has gone all the way back to the days where Pau Gasol was traded from Memphis to Los Angeles. And a lot of teams were upset because they didn't know Pau Gasol was available.
Yeah.
So that's a big reason. And Joe Tsai has come out and said, like, we did not want to send Kyrie there. And see, I'm all for that. I kind of like the rivalry between franchises, and I'm all for the pettiness. It's kind of like snapping back at Kyrie, like, all right, these players are going to force themselves out of situations, which if that can be eliminated, that'd be great in the NBA. So these players already get to basically say, hey, I want out. I want to go here. Well, that's kind of like ownership and management kind of find back the players like, all right, we'll grant you out. We're not going to send you where you want to go. You've done nothing to deserve that kind of respect. It's not like Kyrie played there for 12 seasons And then just it was finally like the end of an era, and they're like, all right, Kyrie, we'll do you this solid. We'll send you where you want to go. Like, no,
Yeah.
that's not the case. Um, so I do get why the Nets made that move. And at the same time, there was still probably a possibility where they were hoping, like, okay, we're getting rid of Kyrie, but maybe we talk to Kevin and see, like, hopefully Kevin still wants to like go forward with this. Because if you do that trade with the Lakers where Russell Westbrook and whatever package behind that comes
Yeah,
in,
that's cap space.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's not a competitive package, and I'm willing to bet KD wouldn't be too inclined to want to play with Westbrook.
Yeah, I wouldn't think if that trade went down, I wouldn't think Russell Westbrook would play a single minute with the
Mhm.
Brooklyn Nets. I just think they look at him as cap space now, the way you look at it. So I thought if you make that move, if you're really trying to keep Kevin Durant around, and who knows what conversations we're going on behind the scenes, but from the outside, it looks like if you're trying to keep Kevin Durant, it'd be more attractive to go to him and say, listen, we're going to make this trade. Kyrie wants out. We're going to go get Russell Westbrook. We're going to buy him out. You're never going to have to see him. He's going to go play for some random team that's going to pay him the league minimum. Then we're going to have that $47 million in cap space. Whoever the best player is on the market, we're going to be able to go get. You can pick. Who do you want to recruit? To me, if you're keeping Kevin Durant, that's more attractive than having Spencer Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith. And then, those other first-round draft picks, because the rumor was that the Lakers were going to throw both of those draft picks into it, and the trade went down because they didn't want to put, I think it was Austin Reeves and Max Christie into the deal or something like that, where some people are criticizing the Lakers. But I look at more of the Nets. If you wanted to keep KD, you had to be having conversations with him behind the scenes. To me, that's more attractive if I'm Kevin Durant trying to stick around in Brooklyn. And maybe, the bridge was already burned. Maybe they completely understand that, hey, we're not keeping Kevin Durant. He's out the door anyway. So you never know what's going on behind the scenes.
Well, I think if you do the trade with the Lakers, obviously you're going to buy out Westbrook and he's gone. Like then that season is more of a loss because then you don't have Dinwiddie, you don't have Dorian Finney-Smith coming in to fill those roles. And Kevin Durant at age 34, like, we don't know how long he's going to be this good, even though he's shown no signs of stopping despite all his injuries and a torn Achilles, which is still one of the greatest injury comebacks in pro sports history, if you ask me, because the man hasn't missed a beat. But you do that Westbrook trade, it's a lost season for Durant and the Nets. Regardless, like I don't think Durant wants to wait around to see if next summer the Nets are able to draw a star in. So I if that's why they did the trade with the Mavericks, just throw out the whole idea of Kyrie and spurning him, or so he doesn't get what he wants.
Yeah,
essentially, and reuniting with LeBron. I think that the Laker move just in any sense wouldn't have been the right direction for the Nets. So I think it was smart, regardless whether there was some bias in terms of who they were dealing with.
Yeah,
that they made that move the way they did.
What this showed me too is that Joe Tsai is calling the shots over there, not Sean Marks. And I'm not one of these guys that usually goes out and is asking for people's jobs, but I think at this point, Sean Marks has to be out the door in Brooklyn come this offseason. I think everything that he's done for them has essentially been a failure. They have nothing to show for it. They're hanging no banners. And yeah, you can blame injury, you can blame coaching, blame Kyrie, blame COVID, blame whatever you want, but he's the one that was supposed to be running things in Brooklyn, and given the way that it's gone down, I just don't see how Sean Marks come this offseason is still the president or GM or whatever his title is with the Brooklyn Nets.
It'll be surprising if he is, because I mean, and I don't think it was totally his fault, but at the end of the day, this is one of the biggest failures in pro sports.
Yeah. You're not going to, the owner's not going to get fired. Someone's got to get fired. You fired your head coach. You love who your new head coach is. Someone's got to get fired, and it's going to be Sean Marks is the way that I see it. I see this position having to come open, but moving. Yeah, go ahead. No. Go ahead.
What do you think Steve Nash is doing right now? He's looking at all this. Like, do you think he's like feet up, sipping a drink, and kind of like,
yeah,
see, told you it wasn't me?
I think Steve Nash has been vindicated. I don't think he's a great head coach. I don't think he's a terrible head coach. I think he's probably right middle of the pack. I think his basketball, intelligence speaks for himself. Obviously, he's was a great point guard in this league. I think Steve Nash is kind of happy. I think we said when it happened, he got fired. We're like, this is probably going to be a blessing in disguise for Steve Nash. And I think it is. And I'll give Jacques Vaughn a lot of credit. He's done exactly what I think the best job he could possibly do under the situation he's in. I'm really glad that he got a shot to be a head coach there.
Mm-hmm.
And he better stick around because I think he's a great head coach and he's proven it game after game, which he doesn't even know who's going to be starting Cam Thomas into. Now we're on Cam Thomas watch if he's going to break the LeBron scoring record. I don't know if you see that. They're like, if he averages these 44 points, he'll break it in 13 years. If he just keeps doing that, it's like, man, we gotta calm down a little bit. But moving on to the other team that we talked about a lot, and that's the Lakers, man. They got out of that Russell Westbrook problem they've had for the past 2 years. It was time to do something with Russ, and it was interesting to see the reports that he was a vampire in the Lakers locker room. I thought that was interesting to see. But good or for bad, I think all of us are just kind of glad that this saga is over. I know you said you thought going into the trade deadline they were going to keep Russ through that deadline. They found a deal. They pulled the trigger. What do you think of the trade?
Well, I have to say, even though I didn't think the trade was going to happen, if you had to ask me what team it was going to be with, the Jazz were probably the most likely option.
Yeah.
And that trade is a great trade for the Lakers because if you look at it, that's a protected pick that they're sending to
1 through 4.
Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And if that pick doesn't convey, it turns into a second round pick the next year, I believe.
Yep.
Which has me wondering, like, what kind of dirt do the Lakers have on Danny Ainge? Like, do they have some photos that he doesn't want to get released? Like, did he lose a bet? Because that's not a great trade for the Jazz because by 2027, this whole Laker thing could be done and they're in need of a top 4 pick. So I don't know. Great trade by the Lakers. Honestly, one of me and my friends who are also very NBA inclined, I guess, for lack of a better term. We have this group chat, and one of our favorite pastimes is just kind of like making fun of Rob Pelinka because honestly, I think he's an awful GM.
I agree. 100%.
Terrible. But he had some of the most impressive trades through this deadline. I have to say, I have to give him credit. This Lakers roster is completely turned around. The best comparison I can make it to is the 2018 Cavs at the trade deadline. They kind of like changed the entire outlook of the roster and brought better players, better fitting players in at the deadline to help LeBron make it to another finals appearance. You ask me, minus Westbrook, minus Pat Beverly, minus Thomas Bryant and everyone else, this Lakers team, they have a chance to crawl out of their hole and potentially make a run for the playoffs.
Yeah. A lot's going to need to be done. See, with Rob Pelinka, though, it's I don't know. My problem is that we knew the issues on the roster from the very beginning. What did they start? 0-12 or something insanely bad that we've never seen.
Bench.
Terribly.
League bench.
We knew what was going on this roster, and I just fear it might be just a little bit too little too late because you look about it, we only have about 35 more games left to go in this season. Lakers are 5 games below 500. I think they're at the 12 seed. They have some fighting to do. They got to finish out the season. They got to go like 16-11 at least to get back to that 500 mark, try to find your way into that play-in tournament. And yeah, I think it was a lot of good moves, but I just wonder if it's like, did you wait too long? Like, did you wait too long to see all those losses come in just to see if, is LeBron still going to be a great player in this league? He's obviously proven he's averaging about 30 points a game this season. He's been great. AD went through stretches, but so far he hasn't looked that dominant as he did before the injury. But I agree with you, turning Russell Westbrook, JTA, Damon Jones, Kendrick Nunn, Patrick Beverly, Thomas Bryant, and a protected first rounder into Ryu Hachimura, Damian Reed, Mo Bamba, D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt. I mean, a lot of those guys, it doesn't make them any sort of favorites in the Western Conference by any stretch. Mm-hmm. There's still a lot of work to do to get into that play-in tournament, but it's no question that the guys that they brought in fit this roster better and
those
fit
are real rotation players.
They fit playing around LeBron a lot better. I like D'Angelo Russell in that starting point guard position. Then you bring in those guys like Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt. They can knock down a shot. They can also defend. They have good length. Mo Bamba, I like kind of him coming in, replacing the role that Thomas Bryant was doing because we kind of heard some things. Thomas Bryant was just going to walk in the offseason anyway, so you kind of make that move, bring in Mo Bamba. Ryu Hachimura, he's looked good, as far as in some stretches with the Lakers. I think they're hoping for him to take another step forward too, down there with the length that he gives them, but there's still a lot of work to be done, but I think they gave up a lot of guys that were contributing nothing on any given night. and they got a bunch of guys that have size, they have length, and I know this is crazy. They can even knock down a shot, which who knows? You needed to do that in basketball. Maybe we'll see the 3-point shooting for the Lakers improve a little bit. It's hard to go down, but I agree with you. I think moves needed to be made. I just wonder if it's going to be a little bit too little, too late to save the season.
Yeah, well, you never know. We've seen a couple times during the season where the Lakers, especially when AD was out and LeBron started to turn on the Jets, there are
Yep.
times where it's like they could get over 500 without AD.
Oh man. The
So
most frustrating thing about the Lakers is they've played so many games really well. They've played a lot of games against top opponents really well, and they just let the games go at the end because they just don't have the guys. LeBron runs out of gas because he's out there for 38 minutes a night. The second they'll have a 8-point lead and he steps off the court for 5 minutes and he comes back in and they're down 4 or 6. It's like when he's on the court, they're great. But if he takes those rests, which now he has to do more because he's 38 years old, he's not out there with 28-year-old LeBron. I wonder if there's going to be enough to keep that offense moving around. I think D'Angelo Russell is going to help with that a lot, just keeping the offense going when LeBron's taking his breaks. We need to see a locked in Anthony Davis, but I think if your goal now, if you're at the Lakers, you're saying we got to get into the play-in. That is our goal. We get into the play-in, we can earn that 8 spot, we can earn that, that 7, that 8 spot. Then we can, right now, if you get that 8 spot, your first round matchup is against Denver. In a healthy Lakers team against Nikola Jokic, who hasn't proven anything in the postseason, who knows what could happen. So I agree with you.
Yeah, I was going to say this play-in could be, for at least the West, could be one of the best, if not the best play-in we've seen.
Yeah.
Because most likely that's where the Lakers are going to end up. I don't want to see the Lakers in the play-in if I'm one of those 7, 8, 9 teams. So who knows? We just got the West, like we said, very wide open. A lot can happen, and I just can't wait for this post All-Star weekend break.
Yeah.
I can't wait for it.
It's crazy. You're right. The West is going to be a dogfight, and not to mention you got Kyrie leaving the East and going to the West. You got KD leaving the East and going to the West. I think we can. I'll even say with my Miami Heat, I'm going to say that over in the East, it is a 3-team race right now. It is Milwaukee, it is Boston, and it is Philadelphia. Though it's going to be one of those 3 coming out. And then over in the West, who knows, man? Like we could be in a situation where the Lakers are the 12th seed and they win the play-in, they knock out Denver, and then they're in the second. They're 1 series away from the Western Conference Finals. It wouldn't be crazy to say that everything just clicks because it's LeBron. AD gets locked in, and that's what happened. And then you got those teams up there in like the 3 seed in Sacramento. How much can we trust them in the postseason? We don't know. The Warriors are still floating around there. I know they're dealing with injuries as well, but I agree with you. The West is going to be crazy this postseason. I can't wait to see it. So those were kind of some of the big moves that went down. Obviously, there were some other ones, but I think it was a good idea to kind of just pick some of the ones that we felt might have been a little bit underrated, or some of those teams that didn't make those big splashy moves but really improve their team. So what are some of those trades that you came up with, Jared?
So I do have to say, I was very amused at the end of the day going through all the trades and seeing like who was where. Several of these players are back on teams that they were on in the 2010s, and I kind of love it. Like one underrated trade I looked at was the Rockets sending Eric Gordon and a plethora of second-round picks to the Clippers. Gordon's back on the Clippers. He hasn't been there since the Chris Paul trade. He was part of that trade that brought Chris Paul to Los Angeles. So he's back there. He gives them scoring off the bench. Eric Gordon's looks fantastic for the Rockets in spots, which kind of sucks for the Rockets that they're losing a veteran player. We'll see if they hold on to Danny Green. We already know they're going to get rid of John Wall, who I feel bad for. That man's just getting passed around.
Got sent right back to Houston, man. Oh,
I think the Warriors, moving on from James Wiseman, which I think was the best thing for both parties because he's not going to develop given the Warriors' aspirations. Yeah. And Detroit is in a position where they could really use his talent and hopefully pull some of the potential that made him a number 2 overall pick and pull that out of him. He was number 2, right? He wasn't number 1. LaMelo went number 1. No, Anthony.
No, and I don't know.
Anthony Edwards went number 1, I believe.
Was it?
And then LaMelo went 3. That's right. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. But in return through that 3-team trade, Warriors get Gary Payton II back. That's awesome. He was a big part of why that team was so successful against Boston. With the defense he provides, the hustle, the effort. And like it helps Gary Payton because Portland, one of those fringe teams where we don't know if they're going to fall out of the play-in, be a part of the play-in. I mean, like we said, West so wide open. So great for Gary Payton, great for the Warriors. The other underrated trade, I know we talked a lot about the Lakers, which I hate to admit it, but the Lakers made a lot of good trades.
Yeah.
If you ask me. Let's see. Bones Highland going to the Clippers. I like that one. They got rid of Reggie Jackson, who is now in Charlotte and is going to get bought out.
Yep.
Honestly, both Los Angeles teams did really well. They have Mason Plumlee, which was part of that Reggie Jackson trade, who is a very quality big. Yeah, I would say those ones. The one
Yeah.
trade I didn't get Jakob Poeltl going back to the Raptors. That didn't
Yeah.
make much sense to
I
me.
didn't understand that as well because I think a lot of people talked about the Raptors as one of those teams that they could hit that eject button and just become sellers. And then that came out a couple days before the trade deadline. We're like, what are they doing? They're like, why are you buying on Jakob Poeltl? I thought for sure Jakob was going to find his way to Golden State. I think a lot of people felt like that was a
I would
trade
have
that was
liked
just
that.
waiting for people to hit the go button. They bought on Jakob Poeltl. I mean, the Spurs at this point they're trying to get as low as they possibly can, but literally the underrated trades that you went through are pretty much the same exact ones I went through. The Grizzlies, I will say, as part of that deal that you talked about with Eric Gordon, Grizzlies essentially turned Danny Green, who wasn't playing for them, into Luke Kennard. I would have liked to see more from Memphis. I just kind of taking that, hey, we're in a good spot, but we could be in a better spot, and just kind of saying, hey, if we go out and we pick up this, maybe we overpay a little bit, it could really help us come playoff time. I didn't really see that from Memphis. They kind of stood pat, but taking some guy that wasn't playing on your roster and Danny Green and turning him into a really nice shooter and Luke Kennard, I like that. And I wrote down Clippers as well. Bones Highland and Mason Plumlee added to that roster. I think they're looking at the health of Kawhi and Paul George and saying, hey, we got a real chance in this Western Conference that once again is wide open. It could be anybody. Maybe this is the year that they're healthy for a playoff run and they make a huge run at the Western Conference Finals and maybe find their way to the NBA Finals. And I agree with you. You talked about the Gary Payton going back to the Warriors too. The big piece for that for me is the Pistons. They continued their kind of trend of buying cheap on any guys that were highly drafted that they could possibly turn their careers around. To grab James Wiseman, I think there were reports that if he plays well, if he impresses, he could even be starting for the Detroit Pistons. We're going from basically out of the rotation for the Warriors, going up and down from the G League to starting for the Detroit Pistons. I like what the Pistons are doing because they're just buying low on these guys. I mean, they did the same thing last season with Marvin Bagley from Sacramento. He hasn't been great, but he's been, just kind of piling those guys when you're in a situation where you're going to lose basketball games anyways. You're kind of future star that you're hoping is out for the season in Cade Cunningham. So you realize, things aren't going well. You're getting a lot of young guys some playing time with Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren down there as well. Now you add a guy like James Wiseman with the talent that he had coming into this league. It's one of those buy low, possibly huge return type of guys in the future. So I love that move as well for the Detroit Pistons. But yeah, there was a lot of those moves going around. The Pelicans picking up Josh Richardson, I thought was a pretty good one too. Good. Just having to give up Devontae Graham 4 second-round picks. One of those deals where just second-round picks are flying all over the place. But how about the reunion, too, with Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson over there at the New York Knicks? We did not free Derrick Rose, though. I know that was probably something that you were hoping to see, but we did not get to free Derrick Rose on this trade deadline.
Yeah, and with Derrick Rose signed through 2023, 2024, it's unlikely that he gets bought out because there's still 2 years on his deal.
Yep.
Many teams aren't going to do that because then that contract gets stretched. And with the Knicks, who are, I guess, they think they're in a mode where they can compete in the East, they're not going to want that dead cap on their team for 2 years. So it's very unfortunate because Derrick Rose, if you ask me, is still a very high quality player because we haven't seen him drop off necessarily in talent. Like when he was playing with the Knicks, he was playing well. The Knicks just want to develop their younger players, which is so anti Tom Thibodeau. And the craziest thing, and this might shock you, I was all in on a Zach LaVine centered Bulls Knicks trade yesterday. I was all in for it because a report came out yesterday that even though I'm still unsure how I feel about Billy Donovan and Zach LaVine's relationship is completely frayed. It's destroyed. It's non-existent. And the kicker is every single player in the locker room is on Billy's side, which this news shouldn't be too big of a surprise, but it does paint a pretty clear picture that regardless of what happens, Zach LaVine's probably going to demand out after this season.
Yeah.
He's probably going to want out, and a trade's going to come in the summer. It's going to be at the end of the Chicago Bulls as we know them right now. So in that moment, there was a trade where it was like 3 Knicks first round picks, Quentin Grimes, Derrick Rose, and Evan Fournier, and Obi Toppin for Zach LaVine.
Man.
And I'm like,
Yeah,
you know what?
lot.
The 3 first round picks for the Knicks, who next or in a few seasons could go back to just being awful and incompetent because they're the Knicks.
Absolutely.
If Zach LaVine's going to leave anyway, it gets hometown Derrick Rose back home, and he's going to play because he would be the best point guard on the team. No question, because Lonzo's out, because they're going to announce that Lonzo's not going to be back this season.
I don't think anyone's expecting him back. Yeah.
This is a lost season. Bring the hometown kid home. Bring the most popular Chicago Bull since Michael Jordan back. Yeah. Have him play in front of the home crowd every night. So at the very least, your stadium's filling up because people are coming back just to watch Derrick Rose wear that number 1 again. Like, why not do it? The only thing that held it up apparently was Quentin Grimes. The Knicks didn't want to get rid of him.
He's played well. He's played well recently.
I don't care what you have to do. Obi Toppin's a nice piece. Evan Fournier, you could maybe flip, or hey, it gives the Bulls a shooter, which the Bulls don't have. No. Derrick Rose would be considered a shooter in that team because his 3-point shooting's improved over the last couple of years. Yeah. Like, why not? 3 first-round picks from the Knicks. We're seeing a lot of players better than Zach LaVine go for like 4 or 5. I would take the 3 first-round picks, whatever player that is in Quentin Grimes' place, and all the other players that are listed. If that trade would have went through, that would have been fine with me. I don't really need Quentin Grimes. It's fine. So I'm disappointed in that. Because Derrick Rose should be playing. He should not be sitting when he's healthy.
What was it the other night when Evan Fournier got into the game and he played really well, and he said it was like a one-night stand. I know I'm probably not going to play again, but it was great. He got out there. I think he scored like 15 or 20 points. The first time he's gotten some minutes out of
they should be in the NBA rotations.
What is Thibodeau doing, man?
I mean, the rotation that the Knicks have right now, it's working for them. That's fine. But
he plays 7 guys. He plays 7 guys on any given night.
Is that shocking, though? It's Tom Thibodeau.
I know, but it's crazy.
This
is 2023, man. Oh, man.
It just, those 2 should be playing. Rose especially.
So as it is after every trade deadline, there comes another special time of year for the NBA on the NBA calendar, and that is the buyout market. So there has been quite a few guys who have already been rumored to just be bought out of their NBA contracts and just be able to sign wherever they'd like. Some of the kind of bigger names in those projected buyouts, obviously Russell Westbrook from Utah, Reggie Jackson in Charlotte, Patrick Beverley in Orlando, Danny Green in Houston, Serge Ibaka in Indiana, John Wall in Houston, Dwayne Dedmon with the Spurs, Will Barton with Washington, and Terrence Ross in Orlando. So just going through a couple of those guys, I know we've heard some rumors, but kind of I know the big name, I guess, in that is Russell Westbrook. Where do you think, when it's all said and done, if he gets bought out, Russell Westbrook ends up?
Now, I figured in any trade involving Russell Westbrook, he was going to get bought out.
Yeah.
Whatever team traded for him, because whatever team that traded for him likely wasn't in a position to compete, and it just wouldn't make sense for him to be on the roster, taking up a prime rotation spot for young guys. So looking around the league, I'm like, who does Russell Westbrook really help? I haven't been able to figure this out. There have been a lot of teams that are reportedly interested in Westbrook. Mm-hmm. One of which is the team that also inhabits the Staples Center. I refuse to call it by its other name. Same thing with the Sears Tower. Just, we're not going to do it. We don't do it.
Not going to do it.
But Russell Westbrook might go to the Clippers. I don't know if I like that move. They just brought in Bones Highland. Yeah, they got rid of Reggie Jackson and John Wall. So they kind of do need a point guard. But I'm not sure Russell Westbrook is the answer to that problem. Westbrook, to an extent, still really believes that he is his prime self. And, I mean, give it up to the guy for figuring out a role off the bench with the Lakers, from what it seemed. But at the end of the day, he's just not a winning basketball player, especially at this point in his career. And I don't want to see him tainting the Los Angeles Clippers. I feel like there are probably better options out there on the market for the Clippers, whether by free agents or other buyout candidates. I think the Clippers should stay away. I can't give you a definite place
Yeah.
where Westbrook should go. And I've seen some
Oh.
Bulls fans talking about it, and the Bulls have shown interest. Stay away, Chicago. Don't do it. Even though my brother would love it because that's his favorite player. Don't do it. Don't appease my brother. He doesn't need to be
He
happy
doesn't need that. No,
because I don't need to be miserable watching him brick shots in the fourth quarter. We
I'm
already got
telling
Zach
you,
LaVine for that.
from
We're good.
someone who over the last 2 years has watched a lot of Lakers games, it's not a fun watch. It's not a fun watch,
It's a
man.
fun watch if you're hate watching the
Of
Lakers.
course, yeah, but it's not a fun watch if you're cheering for the team and the colors that he's wearing. But I agree with you. I do think he becomes an LA Clipper. Is it the right move? No, but I think we've already heard that Paul George, who he enjoyed playing with him
He
there in
likes
OKC,
Westbrook.
he's already
One of the few
recruiting him to go
guys.
there. We know that they have the opening there at point guard. I think Russell does find his way to the Clippers. Do I think it's a great move? No. But in terms of what the other team that we've heard a lot, and that's Miami, I would much rather him go to the Clippers than find his way to Miami. So he's kind of out there. He's flirting with your team. He's flirting with my team, and he just left the team with my favorite player. So if he leaves so basically I watch two teams religiously. I watch my Lakers and I watch the Miami Heat. If he leaves the Lakers and finds his way to Miami, I just don't know what I'm going to do, man.
You can't escape.
I don't know what I'm going to do at that point. Oh man. But I think he finds his way to the Clippers. I hope he does, just because then he's not going to Miami. And who I think Miami should go after, and that's the next one on our list, is Reggie Jackson. I think Miami should go after Reggie Jackson for that point guard position after he's bought out from Charlotte. Just kind of redirect the flight from Charlotte a little bit further south. Find your way to South Beach. It's a much nicer place to play basketball anyway. So that's what I would like to see personally.
I think that would be a good fit for the Heat. And honestly, it's possible that that's very likely. However, the Nuggets have shown interest.
Yep.
And I think Reggie Jackson would perfectly fit in there. I mean,
He
Bones
would.
Highland
He
left a
would.
hole in the rotation, and he brings some playoff experience. As we know, he's been he hasn't gone far, but he's played well in some tough games, as we saw with the Clippers when Paul George was hurt and stuff like that. I think Jackson could. It's an attractive place to go. Like Denver is going to most likely be the first seed in this year's playoffs. Why not go to the winning team if you're in the buyout market? So I'm willing to bet Reggie Jackson goes to Denver, but I can also see the Miami Heat.
Yeah, I think those are kind of the two front runners that we look at right now. And what scares me, because I know Miami's looking around and I know that they're going to be in the market for a point guard. And what scares me is because the next name on the list is another point guard in Patrick Beverly, who I do not want to see in Miami either, but also has been linked to Patrick Beverly. So that's why, of those three guys, of Russ, Reggie Jackson, and Patrick Beverly, I am pulling so hard for Reggie Jackson to find his way to South Beach, because I do not want Russell Westbrook or Patrick Beverly. I know Patrick Beverly has history with Miami. I believe he was drafted by Miami way back when. So
Summer of LeBron.
Some people will say that, he's a Miami type of guy. I don't think he's that type of defender that he used to be. I don't think he is an actual point guard. I don't think he distributes the ball. I don't think he can knock down a shot. So I'm looking at all those guys. I think Miami, if you swing and miss at Reggie Jackson, or us maybe, but not Patrick Beverly. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Don't get into that, man. Just stay away from the Patrick Beverly business. I don't know where he'll end up. I just hope it's not Miami.
If Jimmy Butler was not on the Miami Heat, I'd kind of root for Beverly to go there, because without Butler, I do not like the Heat beyond their Miami Vice jerseys that they don't even wear anymore.
Nope, retired those.
No, instead they have these awful hodgepodge jerseys that I can't even begin to explain.
They're unique.
That's a word for them. Mm-hmm. Patrick Beverly is another one of those players where I don't know really where he fits in, but I definitely think a team's gonna take a chance on him.
Someone will, yeah.
It'd be kind of fun and probably horrible to see him in Chicago for maybe like a 10-day contract, just because he's a Chicago kid, and he might bring toughness to a Bulls locker room that probably needs it. You bring him to Miami, I'm afraid a nuke's going to go off, because I could see him and Jimmy Butler coming to blows on the sideline, and Eric Spoelstra gets caught in the middle of it. That's a scary fit. Even though he has that like Miami mentality in him, the Heat culture, I think he would fit, but he might fit too well. and in all the wrong ways.
At this point, I'm gonna
And
be honest. Patrick Beverley fits China. That's what he fits. He fits out of the NBA.
yeah, maybe the Ducks need a player.
He fits out of the NBA at this point. Go over to China. I think that's his best place to go play. I think he's played there before, so he's familiar with it over there. So I think make your reappearance. But a couple of guys, another guys on the market. I'd like to see the Lakers go pick up one of either Danny Green, who make a second stint there with the Lakers, or Terrence Ross. I think Terrence Ross might be the better option if he gets bought out of Orlando. Just another one of those 3 or D type players. I think the Lakers, looking around, if you can pick up another shooter, you might as well. And I think if you pick up one of those 2 guys, you can find in that rotation 15 minutes to give one of these guys that you were previously given to Patrick Beverley. So,
yeah. By the way, I forgot to say, because I saw on Twitter, shout out to our former Northern Star coworker, Kobe Price, on breaking the Beverly most likely going to get bought out. So it's kind of cool to see that. So shout out to him.
That really is.
I don't see who broke the Terrence Ross news, but it might have been him too. As for Danny Green, I mean, he has championship pedigree. He's a really good wing shooter and still can move a little bit on the defensive side. So I could see a lot of teams like taking a flyer on him.
Yeah.
Honestly, he'd fit with Chicago. I don't think he'd go there given the state of the franchise, but that's a player we could use, Bulls. You know why? Because he can shoot and he can defend positions that our players right now can't defend because we play 4 guards at one time.
See, but Danny Green,
knock that off.
He hasn't played this whole season, so he's saving himself up. You know, he wants to make a playoff run. He's not going to find his way to.
That's what I'm saying. He's not going to Chicago. I'm just that's the kind of player we should use. That's what we should have on our roster
if you're looking for it. Absolutely. No, I agree.
So he's going to go to a contender. I think the Lakers would make some sense, although their rotation's starting to fill out. I don't know how much playing time he'd get there. Because he on the Lakers, he'd probably be like 9th or 10th in that rotation.
Yeah.
But yeah,
we'll see.
I think that there's a market for him.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the interesting ones that I don't think a lot of people saw coming because he wasn't involved in any trades, but that's Will Barton over there in Washington, who really hasn't played his way into that rotation. But was it just last year or just a couple of years ago? He was starting games for Denver,
averaging like over 14 points per game.
Exactly. He's got a lot of ball left in him. One of the kind of underrated teams I saw that maybe should take a stab at him is just a team that's in a good position, did make a lot of moves at the trade deadline. Why not Sacramento? Why not Sacramento out there making a move for Will Barton, kind of playing in that backup two guard role? He could play the 2, he could play the 3 a little bit too. He's well rested. We know that he hasn't been playing. He has experience out there in that Western Conference. Just kind of one of those under the radar moves where they can go to him and say, yeah, you could go to this team that might have a better shot, but you could play more for us so we could really use you. So we'll see. But I think Will Barton is going to be one of those guys. A lot of teams are going to be looking around and saying he's got a lot of basketball left in him.
I do like that Sacramento fit. That definitely gets them a veteran for a generally younger team that has plenty of playoff experience. I almost kind of like the idea of him going back to Denver, but that's probably not going to happen. I mean, I could probably say this for half the players on this list, but Chicago, we can take them. But no one's coming here. No one's coming here unless I don't think anyone on this list would actually come here unless for whatever reason the Clippers did not want Russell Westbrook. Which in that case, please go somewhere else. Don't come here.
Oh man. Yeah, well, we'll see as the buyout market starts to flow through, see if more names get added to that, and see as things happen pretty quickly, because a lot of these times by the time the buyouts are reached within the next 20 minutes, we'll see they're intended to sign elsewhere.
What do you think would you want John Wall in the Miami Heat?
I think he's worth a flyer. I mean, I'd be okay with it just because Miami's there's such a need at the guard position.
Mm-hmm.
I think his athleticism, would help them as far as on that second. I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be mad about a John Wall. Like if I was ranking them, I want Reggie Jackson first. I might put John Wall too. Russ 3, then Patrick Beverley 4 if Miami's going to pick up someone in those guard positions. I think Patrick Beverley is by far the worst. I hate to say it. I'd rather have Russell Westbrook than I'd have Patrick Beverley. At least Russell Westbrook
same here.
Gives you a little bit of that energy. Yeah, he's going to miss a lot of shots. Yeah, he's going to have a lot of turnovers, but Patrick Beverley is not better. So we'll see as the buyout market.
Westbrook makes plays. He can make plays at the very least.
Absolutely, man. But we got to move on to our final segment here on the TMO podcast. And that is, of course, Tee Him Up. So, Jarrett, who's getting your technical foul this time around?
Well, Jace, The Chicago Bulls are getting my technical foul. Last night, they faced the Brooklyn Nets, who we typically do very well against. And those Brooklyn Nets are usually have the services of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Well, last night, Kevin Durant was on his way to Phoenix, and Kyrie Irving had already played his first game in Dallas. You know what that means? Not a lot of players they could play in that rotation, because you know why? Nets made several moves, making the players that came into that franchise the week prior or the day of ineligible. Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson were sitting on the side watching that game. They weren't even in. And Mikal Bridges might be the best player on that team, unless you still really believe in Ben Simmons, who the Bulls made Ben Simmons look really good. Ben Simmons felt confident driving to the rim. I can't talk. Yep. That shouldn't happen. Ben Simmons shouldn't be making cuts on offense to get an open pass to put a ball up at the rim. Why does he have that kind of confidence against us? What have we done to give him that confidence? Well, not only did the Bulls squander a lead in the fourth, they let the Nets blow us out. A Nets team where they're basically playing 8 deep because their whole franchise changed overnight, when the Bulls, who didn't make a single move, had the availability of all 15 eligible players that night, and we still lost a must-win game when we're 2 games, now 3, below 500. Yeah. Technical foul to the Chicago Bulls. I'm at my breaking point. We should have traded Zach LaVine. I didn't believe I'd say it, but I'm upset. I'm miserable.
Yeah, and with the way
we might as well get Westbrook. Just put me out of my misery. Think about the Chicago Bulls.
With the way LaVine played last night, he was playing like, man, you got to get me out of here. 38 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist. He was shooting, but that's about it. That was stupid.
DeRozan had like 11 points going into 14. The fourth.
He finished with 14. You guys let Spencer Dinwiddie drop 25, 5, and 6, and Cam Thomas 26 and 4 or 26 and 4.
I think Spencer Dinwiddie is gonna forever continue to burn the Bulls. When the Bulls had him on the preseason roster, no, you can walk, and then he became a diamond in Brooklyn. Yeah, that's
all of a sudden Joe Harris just reignites 18 points.
Oh my God!
Yuta Watanabe dropped 14 points off the bench.
Joe Harris didn't miss a single shot in, what was that, the third quarter? He hit like 5 threes. I couldn't believe what I was watching.
All he shot was threes. He shot 6 for 9. He shot 66% from 3 in that game. Oh, man, that's hilarious. But
he couldn't miss.
Oh, man.
I don't know what to do anymore, man. I keep going to bed upset.
Yeah.
I turned off the game. I went to bed early. Just
I feel it. I mean, but hey, we're Chicago fans. We're in many ways we're Chicago sports fans, so we're used to pretty much being upset in a lot of ways. So, moving on to my team up, I'm giving my technical foul this week to Anthony Davis. We know this by now. It's old news. I'm sure everybody has seen his reaction and his body language after LeBron broke the all-time scoring record against the Thunder. And I know he recently commented on that when he said that he was just upset with the way that they were playing in the game, that he was losing and that he was out of the game at that point. But you need to understand, Anthony Davis, in that moment, that in that moment, in that pressure cooker, when LeBron is about to break the all-time scoring record, more than any, cameras are going to be literally everywhere, and they're going to be pointed at you. And your body language is going to say a lot more than any of your words are going to do. And also, a big reason why they were losing that game was because of you, AD. It's because you weren't locked in. You were not playing with the entire world tuning in to watch that game. You did not look good. You had butterfingers every time the ball was being passed to you. You did not look like you were interested in going down there and getting boards. You were missing shots that Anthony Davis should not be missing down there on the floor. You looked unmotivated. You looked uninterested in even being at the arena that night. You just did not play well. So I hope things are going well behind the scenes. I think we've all seen that clip where LeBron's like, hey, man, I love you. You know, I love you. I think part of it might be, and this is all speculation. I've heard from just a couple people that were speculating as well. So there's no reporting behind this at all. But I think it's maybe possible that the Lakers, you know, were making calls, obviously, on Kyrie Irving, and they just kind of floated out there, you know, what about AD for KD? You know, and maybe he heard something as far as his names were being brought up. His name was being brought up. Maybe that's a reason why he was a little bit uninterested. He was a little bit in his head. That is a possible excuse. Obviously, when it comes to the trade deadline, if you're one of those star players and you don't want to be traded, it can really kind of hit home and kind of affect your play in that way. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe something was going on. Maybe it was just a bad day in his personal life. But you got to understand, in that situation, your body language is going to speak a lot more, and every camera is going to be pointing your direction. It was just a bad look for Anthony Davis because it almost looked like he was jealous of LeBron. It looked like it was like everybody else obviously in the arena, all of his teammates are going nuts. It's an all-time accomplishment. It's a great moment in NBA history. And AD was just sitting on the bench. And it just is not a good look for Anthony Davis. So I got to give him a technical foul this week.
I can understand that one. I'll give Davis a pass personally because, to his credit, he said he was upset because they were losing.
Yeah.
And I think the focus of the game, it wasn't so much winning in terms of the team, but making sure LeBron got to that scoring mark in that night, which, let's be honest, for the last couple of weeks, I feel like more of the focus has been towards LeBron just getting closer to that record. Kind of like how we saw when Curry was just throwing up any shot he could to get the 3-point scoring record, and wins kind of became secondary. Whereas Davis, I mean, he's not really playing for a scoring title, so I don't see why he should really be jealous. And he's trying to win like games. So I can understand why he's in that moment. He's just not happy. He's having a crappy game. He's not playing well. So he's probably down on himself, and he's just upset the team's not playing well. I'm all for Davis looking the way he did. I don't take too much stock in it personally.
Yeah, and see, when it comes to those records like that, I mean, you could tell at the beginning of the game too, LeBron was kind of feeling the pressure of trying to push his scoring a little bit. A lot of the times he sits
the headband.
Well, yeah, and a lot of the times he sits back and he lets kind of the game come to him. He'll, work it up. He'll come out and maybe 6 points in the first quarter, turn it on in the second, the third, and the fourth. And we saw too after he broke the record in that fourth quarter, LeBron was not at 100%. We saw he missed his last game with the Bucks, dealing with, I think it was a foot injury that he's kind of dealing with right now. We saw him take himself out of that fourth quarter, just couldn't finish down the stretch. He was just gassed. And I think when you have those kind of big longevity type records, is when you get super close, it does weigh on you. And it almost is just kind of all right, I know I'm going to do it. Let's get it over with so we can move on to that next thing. Not like you want to just breeze past it, because it is a great accomplishment, but it's just kind of like your team will feel that, you start to push. And then once you break that, I'm sure when LeBron does come back, whenever he plays his next game, I'm sure hopefully with those new guys, they'll just be able to refocus. Scoring title, it's in the background. It's done. It's over with now. Now it's about winning as many games as you possibly can, trying to salvage the season for the Lakers. And I hope Anthony Davis, because they're going to need him, he has to be locked in for these last 30 games of the season. 100%.
Statistically, it'll be interesting to see where LeBron's scoring's at with the addition of D'Angelo Russell and other players that came in. I wonder if he's still going to keep it up or if he's going to drop to like maybe the low 20s.
I think LeBron, if they're winning games, he would be more than happy to deliver the ball wherever it needs to be delivered at this point. I think 100%. If D'Angelo Russell becomes that guy that we saw for a couple of years in Brooklyn when he was running that team and we were seeing, the ice in the vein celebration, I think LeBron at this point would love nothing more than to see those other guys find their stretch with those teams and make a run where he necessarily he doesn't have to score 30, 40 points. If he could score 20, 25 points, LeBron, especially now that he broke the record, I think he'd be more than happy to take a step back if those other guys can show we can win games without you scoring 40 points. Because so far this season, he's needed to score 40 points for them to win a lot of those games. So yeah, it'll be interesting, man. The NBA never stops. It continues to go. It's a lot of fun. And
that's soap opera.
It was a lot of fun breaking down this trade deadline, but that's all we had this week for you guys on the TML podcast. I want to thank you guys all for following along this week on all of our social media platforms. We just reached, I believe it was 17,000 followers on our TikTok over this last week. A lot of you guys have been loving that content over there. Our Instagram as well, a lot of love over there. So we appreciate each and every one of you guys for listening, following along, any comments and likes that you guys give us. We definitely appreciate. So thank you guys all for listening. We'll be sure to catch you guys next time.
And remember, for the second week in a row, free Derrick Rose.